There is a village so remote, most people have never heard its name. No cameras, no crowds, no contracts, just mountains and a boy who fought before he ever knew what fighting was for. He would become one of the most dominant champions in UFC history. He would carry the weight of a lost mentor, the shadow of a legendary friend, and the pride of an entire people. But before any of that, there was Burshi, and Burshi did not make things easy. Dagestan sits in southern Russia, between the Caucasus Mountains and the Caspian Sea. The winters bite deep. The culture is older than memory, and here, a man is measured by how he handles hardship. Islam Makhachev was born October 27, 1991, in Makhachev. But he grew up in Burshi, a small village where everyone knew everyone, and weakness was not an option. His father drove trucks and grew tomatoes. His mother ran a cafe. They were ordinary people, raising a son for an extraordinary life neither of them could have predicted. As a new kid in the village, Islam was an outsider. The streets did not go easy on him. He fought, not for fun, but because that was simply how things worked there. But something in him refused to break. At 7 years old, Islam began taekwondo under champion Islam Makhachev. He tried football, wrestling, striking, always searching. Then he found sambo, a brutal, no-nonsense art born in the Soviet Union. The gyms were bare. The coaches were unforgiving. But this is exactly where champions are built. Islam was never the loudest in the room. He was just always there, early and still training when everyone else had gone home. At school, Islam met Khabib Nurmagomedov. They were young, hungry, and shared something rare. The same values, the same hunger to prove themselves. But it was Khabib's father who changed Islam's life forever. Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov was a legendary coach, a man who built champions not just physically, but mentally. When Islam learned Khabib was already fighting professionally, something shifted in him. He switched to MMA. He came to Abdulmanap. What followed was not glamorous. It was just sweat, sacrifice, and two young men refusing to be ordinary. To survive financially, Islam worked as a security guard. His boss let him train on the job and still paid him, even during competitions. Quiet kindness in a life that hadn't offered much of it. Islam turned professional in 2010. He was 18. No television, no cameras, just cold arenas and small crowds. He kept winning. In 2014, he became Russian national Sambo champion and a world combat Sambo champion. That October, he signed a 4-fight deal with the UFC. He was 22. He was stepping onto the biggest stage in combat sports. But the stage was not ready to make this easy. In May 2015, Islam submitted Leo Kuntz at UFC 187. Clean, fast, exactly as trained. The whispers started. Another dangerous fighter from Dagestan. Then came October 2015. Adriano Martins landed a punch Islam never saw coming. It remains the only loss of his career, but the hardest moment was still ahead. In 2016, Islam failed a drug test for a newly banned substance. His name was suddenly attached to controversy. Critics wrote him off completely. What they didn't understand was simple. Islam Makhachev grew up in Burshi. Pressure was nothing new. He went home, he trained, he waited. From 2017 to 2021, there was no spotlight, just work. He defeated Gleison Tibau, Davi Ramos, Arman Sarukian. He submitted Drew Dober, Thiago Moises, then Dan Hooker, with a vicious first-round Kimura. But behind the wins, something devastating was happening. On July 3, 2020, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov passed away from COVID-19 complications. The man who built Islam from nothing was gone. Khabib retired from fighting that October. He turned his focus entirely to coaching his closest friend. Islam said little about the grief. He simply trained harder. October 22nd, 2022, Abu Dhabi, UFC 280. The vacant lightweight title, on the line against Charles Oliveira, the most dangerous submission artist in UFC history. Round 1. Oliveira hurt him, badly. For one terrifying moment, everyone watching asked the same question. Does he survive this? He did more than survive. Round 2, Islam locked in an arm triangle choke. Oliveira tapped. The arena exploded. Islam Makhachev, the boy from Burshi, the security guard, the man once written off, was UFC lightweight champion of the world. Khabib stood in his corner that night. Some moments are too personal for words. Most champions get comfortable. Islam looked for harder fights. February 2023, he outlasted Alexander Volkanovski over 5 brutal rounds. October 2023, he knocked him out in round 1. Pure evolution. He finished Dustin Poirier, then Renato Moicano. 5 title defenses, untouchable at lightweight. Then he did the unthinkable. He vacated the belt and moved up in weight. November 2025, UFC 322. Islam defeated Jack Della Maddalena to become welterweight champion. A 2-division champion. 16 straight wins. Tied with Anderson Silva for the longest streak in UFC history. Watch him fight, and one thing stands out. He never looks rushed. Patient body locks, suffocating control. A submission game that feels inevitable rather than forced. He holds the highest striking accuracy in UFC lightweight history. Not because he throws more, but because he wastes nothing. This isn't raw talent. It's a system, built in Dagestan, perfected through discipline, and trusted completely. From a forgotten village in the Caucasus, to 2 UFC championships. From street fights and broken down gyms, to the very top of the sport. He lost, he was suspended, he grieved, and every time he came back better. The legacy of Abdulmanap lives in every fight Islam wins. Khabib saw a champion in him before the world ever did. Now the world is still catching up. Islam Makhachev wasn't built for the spotlight. He was built for the work. And the work led him there anyway. If this story moved you, subscribe. Because the greatest fighters aren't remembered just for the belts they won, but for everything they carried to get there.